In this session, we're going to focus on acceptance. And in this presentation, I'll first start by focusing on the opposite of acceptance, namely resistance. And then we continue with the link between mindfulness and acceptance. And finally, we will address some misconceptions, some important misconceptions about acceptance. So first of all, let's start with resistance. In everybody's life, in daily life, we experience, of course, positive things, pleasant things, like an email from a good friend or a compliment, or we may have a nice conversation with a colleague or whatever. So we all experience pleasant things, but at the same time, daily life is also filled with unpleasant experiences, like a traffic jam or an argument that we have with somebody, or having to complete boring tasks at work, and so on and so on. What is interesting is that although both are inevitable, both are part of daily life, we have often a completely different way of dealing with them. In general, we see that we often embrace positive and pleasant things, and we tend to resist or fight unpleasant things. And the reason is, of course, very obvious, because we don't want to experience them. It's not nice to have an argument with somebody. It's not nice to have to complete like boring tasks. Of course, we don't want them. And as a result of that, we resist them. So what we can say about unpleasant things are that they're inevitable. In everybody's life, sooner or later, often sooner, people will encounter negative things. And the examples I just gave were all just like, not very stressful. But, you may also lose a good friend, you may get fired. There may all be kinds of serious negative consequences of just, being alive, living a life that are inevitable. And what we often see is that, especially when these examples are more serious and more negative, we fight them. We don't want to experience them. And it is as we're saying, I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I want life to be about. And as a result of this resistance, all kinds of thoughts and actions emerge to get rid of these negative experiences. So this is how we often deal with unpleasant things. And we can say that when something negative, like now, in this moment happens, like pain, what we want automatically is no pain. We want to get rid of this pain. So once we start resisting pain, we enter a mode in which we say, I want to get rid of it. If I experience pain in this moment, a conflict emerges because we say, I don't want this fear to be present. So our mind gets occupied with no fear. And the same applies to things like sadness. I don't want to feel sadness. I want to feel joy. So what happens if we start resisting current experiences is that immediately a conflict occurs between what is happening right now and what our mind tells us that should be happening. And as a result of this, and I've made a picture here to demonstrate what's going on, as a result of this, we are getting focused very much on an end state. We're getting pretty much focused on feeling good and reaching this goal state of feeling better, and do everything to reduce the discrepancy that exists between this very moment, for instance, sadness, and what I should feel, like feeling happy again. And in order to reduce this discrepancy, what we do is we have all kinds of strategies to make this work. We may suppress the feeling of not feeling good in order to feel better. We may distract ourselves to get to this end state. We may reframe our feeling, like, oh, this is normal, everybody has got this feeling, we can do all kinds of cognitive tricks to make us feel better. We maybe even engage in positive thinking, not allowing ourselves to feel what we feel, but try to, induce a positive state by engaging in positive thinking. And as you can see here, positive thinking in itself, there is nothing wrong with it. But if it's used in this way, positive thinking has the goal to not feel what is present. So it's a matter of avoiding and resisting current experiences, which can be very dangerous. So once we start resisting the present experience, our attention becomes focused on the desired goal state. So this is indicated by the gray circle here. What is acceptance? And this is something we're going to address here in the second chapter. And what is the link between acceptance and mindfulness? But before we do so, I would like to ask you to do a small exercise. I want you to control your thoughts for 2 minutes. You're allowed to think of everything you want except the white bear. every time you do think of a white bear, please register this. So in other words, try to suppress every thought of a white bear as good as possible. If you're like most people that do this exercise, you will notice that it's really difficult to suppress the thought of a white bear. To reach the goal state of not thinking of the white bear is often impossible. We find ourselves thinking even more about the white bear. And this is what we call rebound effect. So when we suppress thoughts, the paradoxical effect is that we want to get rid of them, but we experience them more. And in the example of the white bear, it was a very well, it was not a very serious example, but the same applies to very serious thoughts, like dramatic thoughts or very negative thoughts. When we try to suppress them, we find ourselves in the same position, experiencing these thoughts even more often. And the same applies to other areas as well. I'm not sure if you've ever tried to fall asleep to reach the goal state of, sleeping, but if you try really hard, often you find yourself awake for many hours. You will not fall asleep in this way. In the literature, there are loads of examples of studies that show that people who really want to lose weight and try to control weight, they actually gain weight. So again, in some cases, and in many cases, trying really hard to focus on a goal state is counterproductive. So if we take the same example that we saw in the previous slide, wanting to go to another state, avoiding what is happening right here, right now, often we're not successful. Suppression is not helping us to reach that state. And distraction may help us temporarily to reach that state, but once we are not distracted anymore, we again feel not good anymore. So all these methods, they often not help us in the long run to feel better. So what is acceptance? Well, acceptance is the opposite of avoidance. And rather than, moving away from what's happening, mindfulness is about the willingness to experience what is present. Mindfulness involves being able to connect with whatever is present, negativity, positivity. And the present moment focus that is so characteristic of mindfulness is also applied in what we call here emotion regulation. Rather than, if you take the same picture again, focusing on the end state of feeling better and focusing on the future, mindfulness is about the present moment and staying in contact what is happening right here, right now, and allowing oneself to feel this. So it is a great contrast here with the previous, examples that all were focused on getting rid of something, on the future, how life should be. This is about how life currently is and accepting this experience. So if we feel pain, fear, sadness, or whatever, mindfulness is about accepting that this happens. What else choice do you have? It is happening right here, right now. Letting go of judgment, this shouldn't happen, this is not okay, it should be different, and allowing yourself to feel what is present, accepting yourself for having these feelings and staying in contact with them rather than moving on to a goal state. And what is often happening is that, and this is a graphical representation of this process, is that when we experience something, and this is displayed here in this graph, the feeling, the intensity, of course, often becomes more severe. And as soon as we notice that there is some kind of negative feeling and it becomes stronger, what we do is we soon try to control it. Oh my God, this is getting more serious. I should do something about it. And we try to, intervene at a very early stage. Mindfulness is fundamentally different from this process because mindfulness actually says, well, stay connected to the feeling. No matter what happens, just let it rise and let it go. Sometimes feelings, they become stronger and then they fade away and they come back. Whatever happens, it's okay. Just follow the feeling. Allow it to take its natural course rather than to modify it at an early stage. This is what the main difference is between acceptance and resistance. Resistance is about controlling, often in a very early stage. Mindfulness is letting it unfold, letting it be as it is. And interestingly, we've talked about negative situations, but resistance and And non-acceptance can also apply to positive situations, you know. But in general, of course, pleasant situations, positive things are less difficult to deal with. You know, it's not so difficult to enjoy a nice meal or to have a nice conversation. But the conflict often emerges when we try to hold on to these experiences. As soon as we become aware of the fact that they will fade away eventually, we may, you know, end up in a state of control again. We try to hold on to them and we don't want them to pass. And then we get attached to them. We say, oh my God, you know, for instance, you're having a drink with friends and you have a great time and suddenly you realize that tomorrow morning you have like an awful meeting at work. And this thought of the future and this realization that this beautiful moment will not last forever, you know, can in some way cause you to really want to hold on to this moment and think and not think about tomorrow anymore and so on. So you try to control this experience, and in the same paradoxical way, you're losing it. You're losing the beauty of the moment because you're trying to hold on to it. You try to control it, and there is a conflict between what is now and what you anticipate in the future. So we can also you know, put this in a figure. So in the example that I just mentioned, you know, you're having a drink with friends, the positivity that you experience is high, you know, you're having a good time with friends, but as soon as you think of the future, you anticipate that the future will be less positive. This is what actually is happening in terms of the process here. Your mind is about the future and it tells you tomorrow will be a not so good day. And at that very moment there, you know, emerges a conflict between what is happening right now and what could happen tomorrow. And if we're not aware of this process, our mind can easily take over and tell us to, you know, enjoy this more, not think about tomorrow and so on. And we're, you know, involved in another conflict. While we're paradoxically, you know, trying to enjoy the present moment, we're not enjoying it anymore because the anticipated future is spoiling it. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness in this context means that you accept and see that nothing lasts forever. You know, it is the realization that everything fades, everything is transient, everything comes and goes. And this I think this is beautiful at the same time because it makes life dynamic. Imagine that everything would stay the same forever. You know, every experience would be like positive forever. You know, life would become very static and boring. You know, the fact that there is fluctuation, that things can change, makes life very, I think, also very exciting. And rather than trying to avoid change or hold on to something, mindfulness is about surfing on change, you know, letting it be and just experience it instead of avoiding it, you know, adopting it and acknowledging it and accepting it as part of life and just, you know, go with it, go with the flow, you know, just connect again. And it is because pleasant moments pass, we need to experience them fully. And this is a realization that is also very much linked to mindfulness, you know, because everything fades, even beautiful moments. It is very important to be able to fully enjoy them and connect mindfully to them. So this is the relationship with mindfulness and positive experiences. So in this final part, I would like to focus on some common misconceptions when it comes to acceptance. And I think one of the most common misconceptions about acceptance is that it's like indifference, that when people accept things, that it's like, okay, I don't care anymore. Everything is okay. I don't make a difference anymore. You know, it's, you know, I'm indifferent in some way. But this is absolutely not the case. Mindfulness is not indifference. In fact, mindfulness is pretty much caring about life. Sometimes people believe that acceptance is liking or agreeing with. So, for instance, if somebody wrongfully accuses you, that acceptance would mean that you say, okay, I agree with it, that you just like nodding and say, yes, yes, I fully agree with that. No, it's absolutely not like that. I will give you a few examples of what acceptance means in a few seconds. But it's also not passive resignation. It's not, you know, dropping the baton. It's not saying, okay, I'm done with it. I'm resigning here. It's a very active stance. It's not passive. So what is it? Acceptance involves, first of all, the willingness to experience. So it's not a passive mode of sitting back and just not doing anything anymore. It's an active mode of getting in contact with things and moving toward things and experiences. So it involves tuning into personal feelings. What we accept in mindfulness is not the situation or what somebody tells us, but it's about accepting our own personal feelings. And this requires us to be in line, in tune with these feelings, to know what's going on. So acceptance, first of all, also involves knowing what's going on. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And it's letting go of control. We've discussed all kinds of examples in this presentation in which people try to control what is happening. Either they try to control positive things, making them last longer, or try to get rid of negative things. All these examples involve control, but mindfulness is letting go of that. It's letting go of the need to control things, and it's about taking responsibility. So acceptance doesn't mean that you accept everything and that you say, well, I cannot do anything about it, and you get into like a passive coping mode in which you're not, taking responsibility anymore. It is very much taking responsibility for the fact that you feel things and that you have to deal with those feelings. So it is taking responsibility. So let's take an example to illustrate what acceptance actually means. So imagine somebody wrongfully accuses you. This is a situation that occurs. What you accept here is the feelings of anger and frustration that emerge as a result of this situation. So acceptance is mainly about what you experience. It's about accepting your experiences, your feelings, and so on. But in this situation, you express discontent with the accusation. So I'm deliberately putting this information here because it means that acceptance is not about saying yes to everything that happens and just, getting into a passive mode and not doing something anymore. It's about actively dealing with what you experience, but after that, you deal with the situation. Another example, you're waiting for the train and the train is delayed. And of course, you're frustrated because of this, you're late for an appointment and you experience anger and so on. So what you accept in this situation are these feelings, the fact that you experience these feelings and so on. So this is what acceptance is about. You're willing to experience these feelings and you accept them. But, at the end of the day, you file a complaint with the railway organization. So again, this example illustrates that mindfulness and acceptance is not about accepting everything that happens. It's about accepting what you experience, taking responsibility, and act upon this responsibility. So this was it. Thank you for your attention.